We're here in Lesson 01, Introducing Excel, with a workbook by the same name. Microsoft has created a very extensive menu system for Excel, and sometimes it can be quite overwhelming when you look at all the commands and all the options that you have available to you. The good news is that Microsoft has gone to a great effort to organize this information as much as possible to make it easy for the Excel user. In this lesson, we're going to review some of the basic elements of the menu system. The most basic component is what is called the ribbon. The ribbon is this green bar across the top. The ribbon also includes all of the tabs that are inside the ribbon. These tabs are seen here. This is the Home tab, Insert tab, Page Layout tab, Formula tab, etc. I'm going to go back to our Home tab. The Home tab holds lots of commands, as you can see. These commands have been chosen because they're the ones most commonly used. Now this is good news for the end user, because this means that about 80% of all the commands you'll need is available to you on the Home tab. So that's a very important concept, the ribbon and the tabs. Well, inside each tab, as I mentioned before, are commands. We see here, for instance, here's bold, or italic, or underline, or here is fill color, or font color. These are kind of well-known commands. We see them in other applications like Microsoft Word. These commands are also put together in groups. We see here the word font. This is referred to as the font group. So over here we have the alignment group. Now the alignment group has in it what you would expect: left, center, and right align, as well as some other features that we'll talk about later. We have a numbers group, a styles group, a sales group, and an editing group. And all of this is available to us in the Home tab. There's one other feature that's very interesting here, and a lot of times this gets overlooked. In the bottom right corner of several of the groups is something called a dialog box opener. And as I put my mouse over it, you can see what it says here. Font settings, Control-Shift+F. This can also be opened with Control-1. Let's open that up just briefly so you can see what this looks like. This is, generically speaking, a dialog box. In particular, this is the Format Cells dialog box. The word dialog box is really quite a useful term because you'll need to use it in many programs to describe the boxes that open up when you're looking for certain commands. I'm going to close this. Let's take a look now at a little more detail of each of these tabs. Let's go over here to the Insert tab. Insert allows you to insert different things into a worksheet, and that might help you remember the Insert tab. For instance, you might want to insert a table, or insert a picture, or insert a shape. You could also insert charts, and there are many charts to choose from, including recommended charts based on the data that you have selected. Also quite useful is insert a text box. The Page Layout tab concerns itself mostly with printing. You can see here where you could change the margins, or the orientation of the paper, or perhaps the size of the paper you're using. Something also very useful, Print Area, would allow you to select the area that you want to print. The Formulas tab is where we see the many choices we have in functions and formulas. In this case, the group is called the Function Library because they've been divided into different books. And you see here we have icons for books. And inside of each one of these books has the commands and the functions that you'll need under those categories. And there might be some that will surprise you. For instance, many to do with text, or many to do with math and trigonometry. The Data tab has some very useful functions like sort and filter, and even some amazing features like what if analysis or forecast sheet. You can even automatically create subtotals. The Review tab isn't used as often, but still is rather important. You can do things like spell check or use a thesaurus. You can also protect a sheet or protect an entire workbook. And finally, here on the View tab, we have some useful features, zooming in, zooming out to get a closer look at your data. You can also freeze areas of a worksheet, and you can switch between windows when you have multiple Excel windows open. It's important to understand how the ribbon operates, because sometimes the ribbon will disappear or it will look different, and you'll need to know how to restore that. Over here, we have something called Ribbon Display Options. This allows you to control how the ribbon will act. For instance, if I was to say Show Tabs, you'll see that I only show the tabs. Here we have Home, Insert, Page Layout, Tabs. When I click on it, then the commands will actually show. But when I click away, it will disappear again. So we can change that setting here to say Show Tabs and Commands. We also have a feature called Auto Hide Ribbon. This makes the entire ribbon disappear, and the only way you can bring it back is to find this icon again that will still be available to you and click on it and make a choice. I should mention one more thing, and that is that you can double-click any tab to get a feature called Hide Commands to show tabs only. So I'll click on this Page Layout, I will double-click, and all the commands are gone. I have to click it once, it'll show up again, but when I click away, it's gone. But I would have to double-click to make it stay. Now let's talk about one of the tabs that we skipped over. That's called the File tab. The File tab is different than all the other tabs. Microsoft refers to this as the backstage view. For instance, we can open up a new file, or we can open an existing file. We can save or save as. Now, I've been asked several times, which is better, save or save as? My personal preference is to use save as when you first open up someone else's document, or a document that you know that you'll be changing. Save it to a new name, then as you edit and make changes to the worksheet, you can simply click Save, knowing that you're saving it to a new name. That way you preserve all the data in the original worksheet. I want to talk a little bit about New. So I'm going to click on New, and we'll see that we have the obvious choice of Blank Workbook. This is a simple blank workbook that you could start entering data into. But many times is overlooked all of these templates that are available to you. These templates can allow you to create things that otherwise might be quite difficult for you. Here we see an example of a calendar. You can simply click on Let's Get Started, and it can lead you through importing some information. I'll close this one. Let's take a look at another one. Here's Home Inventory. In this case, it wants you to create first, and when you hit Create, it will simply create this Home Inventory worksheet. It'll already be populated with some items, some numbers that you'll simply have to go in and change. I'm going to close that here. You can also search for all these different categories. Now, depending on the version of Excel you have or the resolution of your monitor, this might look slightly different. But you can see here there are lots of categories. You can also simply search for anything that you're looking for and then make a selection. Now, you might be wondering, how do I get out of my File tab? Well, that's a good question. Right here we have a back arrow that you can use. You can also use Escape on your keyboard. I'm going to use the back arrow. And finally, I want to mention something you may have noticed. I'm going to go to my Home tab, and you've noticed that as I hover my mouse over each command, we get a description of the command, and many times we also get a shortcut. In this case, Control B will give you bold. As you go through these lessons, always look for what the shortcuts are. They're there for you because they can make life a lot easier. And if you can save only a few minutes each time you work in Excel, that can add up to a lot of time. Let's look at a few more examples here. This font color does not show a shortcut, so there probably isn't one available for it. Here, there's a very nice description, but no shortcut. Here's an even longer description, and you'll notice at the bottom it says Tell Me More. Let's see what that does. This opens up a help pane all the way over to the right. This help pane can be separated by simply clicking at the top and dragging it over, and it can be docked back again by simply double-clicking it. When you're done using the help pane, you can simply close it here with this small X. So take advantage of learning more about all the different commands. And remember, you don't need to get overwhelmed by the huge selection you have in Excel. It is a very powerful program, but it's been broken down for you into individual tabs that are on the ribbon and broken down into several groups. And in some of the groups, like back on our Home tab, you also have dialog box openers, which gives you even more choices that you can make. We'll be discussing all of these features in more detail later in upcoming lessons.